Kieran McGiver with Boxing Bants, and I'm very happy for the first time to be joined with Kevin Cronin, the Kerry man. How are you, Kevin?
Good down here. How are you?
Grand. We're both live from our bedrooms.
Yeah, yeah. It's a late stay after bed now.
Yeah, well, I just a lot of people in the house, like my girlfriend, our parents, and then me, and then if rooms are taken up, you have to find somewhere. So yeah,
Yeah, back to those.
so how have you been? I'm right in saying you're a firefighter. So how has life been for you during the last year?
It's been all right. Obviously with lockdown, it's been a real bitch. Like, not being able to fight and stuff. But training wise and stuff, look, we're just keeping the head down, keep training, staying ready. We had a nice Christmas break there for a couple of weeks, and we're back at it now, just working hard down here. Obviously, it's a bit of a pain as well, not being able to travel up to Jono and the coaches above in Dublin as much with the lockdown. But look, it'll all come back to normal hopefully soon, and we can get 100% working soon. But yeah, we're training away hard down here anyway for now.
Mm. Has it been difficult for you, like living in Kerry? You probably lived the furthest away from Belfast and Dublin out of every fighter in this country. Like, has it been difficult for you because obviously anytime you're going to a show abroad or in this country, selling tickets is a big thing, and you have to bring a lot of people up from there, and obviously traveling and to train in Dublin like Dominic Dunnigan as well, that must be tough as well. Has that affected you much since you've turned pro?
You know what? The worst of the travelling is just driving up and down to Dublin, that long boring drive. Other than that, everything else is perfect. When you said the crowds down here, trust me, they'd follow you anywhere down here. If you were to drive to America, they'd all jump on a bus and they'd come. Like, the following is great, and they're going to be there all the way. So for the following, there's no problem with the travelling. Worst of it is just that long boring drive up and down to Dublin. But look, it'll all be worth it in the end.
Yeah. So, I know at the start of, I was kind of saying this last week in another interview, which you probably saw with Taylor Mc Goldricks, but I know originally MTK were looking to do a show in Belfast, and obviously at the time the pandemic had hit, and the only way any show would really happen in this country in this time would be if Irish were fighting Irish. It was on the island, and it was essentially 50-50 fights. There's a lot of things that were mentioned, a lot of names that were mentioned together, but one that looked like it was kind of agreed and done, not necessarily done, but you had agreed to fight each other, was you and Taylor Mc Goldricks. And Taylor said, yeah, it was pretty much like if the show went ahead, you two would have been fighting, and you'd accept it all. Would that be accurate? Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, on our side anyway, it was verbally agreed by us. I obviously, if he said they verbally agreed as well, then they did. Like, John, he's obviously not talking shit, like. But yeah, as far as I knew, I got the call from Leonard. He said, "How are you for that?" And I said, "You know what?" I said, "Give me 5 minutes." I rang my coach in Dublin, Jono, and I said to him, "This is a fight I fancy. What do you think?" And he went away. He'd a look at the videos too, and he said, "Yeah, the fight suits you." And I rang Leonard back no more than 15 minutes later, and I said, "Let's do it." So there was nothing on paper signed. We never, there was no contract or anything. Obviously, the card fell through, but verbally the fight was agreed. And you know what? It was a shame not to fight last year, but at the same time, it would have been a waste of a fight to have behind closed doors and over probably what would be, I don't know, a 4 or 6 rounder, because that would be a cracking fight.
People will kind of say that if it was any other time, people saying, "Oh, maybe it's a bit too soon for both of these to fight each other and maybe build it and stuff." But the pandemic, in a way, was a benefit in terms of those type of fights because he's 3-1, you're 2-0, and I think because he lost his last fight, the fight makes a little bit even more sense. What was it that you saw in Taylor? Have you did you know much about Taylor before you were offered the fight, and what was it in him that made you think, yeah, I'd like that fight?
You know what? I know he said it last week, but I am not. The one thing I'm not doing is judging someone after worst performance. Because if you judge someone after worst performance, you're like you're not standing a chance because you have to prepare for the best of someone. So the way we prepare and we were going preparing last year was we watched what clips we could find of his fights. We picked out the very best of what he showed. So we picked out the best bits of his fights. And even watching them, talking with Jono, we just said stylistically, he's like, I take nothing away from Taylor. He's a great fighter. But I just think stylistically we'd clash. And I think the best part of him, even when he's boxing, I think my style suits perfect to outbox him at his best. So that's one reason that I'd like that fight. And the other reason is I think me and Taylor were built the same. We just have this thing in our head. We both want to push forward. And the way we have to push forward is we have to fight each other. So it's like, it's a fight that can open a door. If Taylor wins, he pushes on and he goes on and gets them bigger fights. If I win, I push on to the bigger stage as well, and I'll go on and I'll get them big fights. So I think we both know that, and that's why we both want this fight so bad.
Did you know much about him, like from amateur days or anything like that? Have you known much about Taylor over the last few years?
I've never heard of that fight in my life. Nah, going off what he said last week. That's what he said last week about not knowing me. Look, he knows who I am. He knows exactly who I am, and I can guarantee you he's watched my fights. Through the amateurs, no, I knew nothing about him in the amateurs, but I wouldn't judge someone after their amateur career anyway because it's a whole different sport. In the professional, yeah, I've watched his fights since he's turned pro because I like watching up and coming Irish boxers, so he was one of them I was watching. And yeah, look, I've seen a few of his fights. There's certain things I like that would suit me good, and obviously there's certain things that wouldn't suit me too good, and that just makes the fight that bit more interesting.
Mm. So do you never cross paths in the amateurs ever? Like, if you think back in an intermediate competition, anything like that, you don't recall?
As far as I know, he fought. I think he fought 75 kg in the amateurs, if I'm right. Come here. When he was weighing in 75 kg, I was weighing in 120 kg, fighting guys a lot bigger than me. So no, we never crossed paths in the amateurs.
All right. I just thought maybe even if you saw him on the same show or or the same night, if intermediates were on one
No,
night.
I was just one of them lads. I wouldn't really watch much else
Yeah,
going on around me.
yeah,
I'd be
yeah.
just worrying
And
about my own.
you probably had no interest at that stage because if you were fighting in that weight class, you would have been one of the last people fighting, so you would have probably had absolutely no interest in the fights that were going on.
I'd be more worried about the
Yeah,
big lump of a fella that'll be coming at me from the other side of the ring, to be honest with
yeah,
you.
yeah. I'd say that weight class in amateur is no joke. There's some of the people you see, the size of the people, and you think you're a big lad. You think, oh, I'm tall, and then you see them, and you're like, oh my god. Um,
Yeah, I figured that out very fast. You know what? I was boxing lads a lot bigger than me, and I'd be out boxing them all night, and just feeling though it's not worth being at that weight class when you can be weight classes lower because you feel every punch they throw, and like when you have a fella 120, a lean 120 kgs or 110 kgs in front of you throwing punches, you will feel them.
mm. So when I interviewed Taylor kind of said that when he thinks about it, he says he said, Kevin's doing a lot of talking, and he also said that I think it's a very dangerous fight for him. And then he followed up then after that, kind of saying, "Look, I know I'm a strong puncher, but I also think I would be technically like too much for him." What did you think of those comments in particular?
Yeah, look, you got to be confident in yourself. If that's what he thinks, that's what he thinks. Personally, technically a lot better than me. Look, I'm underrated. I've had two fights. My fight in London, obviously, I wanted to just kind of show a bit of power and walk forward. He doesn't know what I can do technically, so I know he's trying to build himself by saying it, but it's just something you'd have to see in the night. I know I could outbox Taylor Mc Goldricks over 8 or 10 rounds, whatever it be. I know I could do that. But look, if he wants to find out the hard way, it is what it is.
What do you think? What do you think would be your strengths over Taylor if you were to name them?
Strengths. Look, southpaws were always something that just suited me, and I liked boxing southpaws. Like John, not going in throwing bombs. It's great to do that with journeymen, but because like they mightn't throw much back. But whenever I box, I've never lost a southpaw, and when I box with a southpaw, I always come out the better in a box, just boxing with a southpaw. So looking at his style, it's the same kind of style that I just love boxing. And look, it's all I could say is you just have to see on the night. I just know how the fight would go. Look, obviously I don't want to be saying too much. I don't want to be saying my strengths to tell you what way I'm gonna box him, because then he could be watching this and he could prepare for that. Just something. Look, if this fight happens, hopefully, I'm seriously hoping this fight will happen at the end of the year. But if it happens, I'll just show you my strengths.
Have you had conversation with his team and Leonard and Stephen and Dennis about where would you fight and what's the possibility of fighting? Like, has there been any conversations in regards to that?
No, look, there's been no conversations about the fight with our two teams. I haven't talked with Leonard. He knows I'm game, and he thinks it's a good fight for me. I think it's a good fight for me. My whole team thinks it's a good fight for me. And the vibe I'm getting is their whole team thinks it's a good fight for them, which is brilliant. Because, look, our two styles will clash, and I think it'll be a cracking fight for a couple of rounds, and then I think I'll just take over. But no, there's been no talk about that yet. But I think it'll be an easy fight to make. Look, I know Jamie Conlon seems like he'd be game for it as well by the way Leonard's talking. So just should be an easy fight to make. There's been no talks yet between the two teams, because obviously we've both been out of the ring over a year now because of COVID. So look, in ideal world, if I get 3 fights before the fight had happened, perfect. But look, if it's just going to be 1 or 2 fights, then it is what it is. And I'm pretty sure him and his team are thinking the same. They'd love to get 3 or 4 fights as well before, because we need it. To be fair, we do need it. And yeah, look, it'll be an easy fight to make when it comes to
it. Because originally when you were talking to each other, talking about each other about having the fight this year, and it kind of came across when I was texting Taylor before and speaking to him in the interview, it seemed very much like you both kind of wanted it next, and I kind of thought to myself that whether it was a Celtic Clash abroad or another show abroad, or it was a show here, that both of you would fight each other next, wherever it was. But Taylor, when I asked him, he said if it was here, yeah, he'd definitely take it, Dublin, whatever it is, straight away. But he also said if it was abroad, like in Spain or whatever, he said he'd rather have 2 warm-up fights before it. What do you think of that, and would your mindset be similar to that or different?
Yeah, look, I think he'd bang on with that. We need warm-up fights. If the warm-up fights are going to be there, we should take them. And this is a fight that should happen in Ireland, 100%. It'll be, look, if it doesn't happen, if it has to happen anywhere else, I'm game for wherever. But I think we'd both just love to have all our supporters there cheering us on for that fight. So it'll be, idealistically, Ireland would be the place to have that fight. But look, as he said, if it's going to be out foreign and the warm-up fights are there, take the warm-up fights, because look, we're only 2-3 weeks into this year, and just like talks have only, well, not talks, but words have only been exchanged over the last week and a half, and it just seems longer, because it just seems like this fight is building already. So could you imagine how big this fight would be in 9-10 months' time? I just think this would be a huge fight for the light heavyweight division in Ireland. So yeah, look what you were saying. What do I think of that? I think it's bang on. We won't need warm-up fights. If the warm-up fights are there, we'll take them. And look, if they're not, then we'll just have to go with it.
Like, ideally, if you kind of go for it, it'll obviously probably end up being a 6-rounder. But if you have a fight in between, it would be great in the sense that you could both have a 6-rounder. Number one, he could have a win. He could also have a 6-rounder behind him again. And you can have your first 6-rounder. And then both of you will be eligible for the Celtic title. So then when you do fight after that, you'd be eligible for the belt. Was the belt ever in your thinking for it? Or are you just... you'd like to fight in whether it's 6-rounder or an 8-rounder for a belt? Is there any preference?
I think he'd be wasted on a 6-rounder, to be honest. But saying that, I want Taylor to get a win before it. I want him to get 3 wins, 4 wins, 5 wins, whatever it'll be. Because the thing is, I want this to be my breakthrough fight. So I want the very best Taylor Mc Goldricks coming at me. I don't want the worst Taylor Mc Goldricks or in between. I want the very best because I want to be able to prove myself. I just want to be able to prove that I'm there, I'm at that level, and I can take out these lads. So I want to be seen taking out the best Taylor Mc Goldricks. And 6-rounder or 8-rounder, man, I think this fight could be done over a 10-rounder. I think that perfect. A 10-rounder would be ideal for this fight because I just think you'd be able to fight over a 10-rounder. The longer the rounds, the better the fight.
It's so if the fight happened, it definitely be light heavyweight. Is that right? Because has Taylor fought at super middleweight at any stage? I think, but it would definitely be.
No, he hasn't made. He hasn't made super middleweight. I know he says he's super middleweight, but he hasn't weighed in super middleweight for any fight. But look, I don't know. We'll see. Obviously, that's a thing for negotiations down the line whenever this fight looks like it's going to happen. But ideally, light heavyweight. But look, if it really came down to it, I'd go down to super middleweight because it'd be another thing to just tick off the list, and it'd be another way of proving myself that I don't have to fight at my natural weight class to be able to beat these lads. I can come down and beat them in their own ground as well.
Yeah. Well, look, thanks very much, Kevin. Really appreciate your time, and
thanks
stay safe. Stay safe.
Yeah, same. Cheers for having me.
Thanks very much, Kevin. Right.